welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. We've got a good fight for you today. My name's Justin Julander, if you were wondering, and with me as always is my co-host, Chuck Poland.
Hello.
So, what you got going, man?
What do I got going? It looks like I've got two pairs of Williamsi. I paired both of them up. I actually got eggs from one of them, but like in typical Chuck fashion, I was not fast enough to put the egg containers in there. So they're gluers. So the female laid right at the back, like I use Ecos. And she laid like right at the top in the back where like the vent is. So one, they're glued in there. Two, they're way back in there. So kind of not ideal. And you know, that's a species that will eat their young, and the adults can be pretty aggressive. So I'm kind of like, I wish I had been. I mean, I didn't. You know, I wasn't even 100% sold, because the female, I got three unsexed animals from Frank Payne, and I wasn't 100% sure that they were all females. And I was pretty sure, but I just was like, well, I don't know. And I was literally like, I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna put those in there, and I just should have. But it's okay. That's okay. Yeah. There's worse problems to have.
Is there a way to put like a deli cup around them so that you can have them kind of protected? Is there a way to slip one in there, or might have to cut one up a little? But
so it's kind of almost in a. So it's like on a. It's in like kind of in the back of the cage, and there's like a little recess back there, and they actually like to hide back in that. But it's like recess behind the recess where the slider for the vents are. So so they hide back on that little ledge, but then back behind that is where the eggs are, and they're glued in there. So I mean, I'm not really worried about the eggs. Like, my only concern would be they'd get a little too warm being right there, possibly. But my room's so stable, and I think the temperatures are good there that they can incubate there just fine. My concern is when those babies hatch, getting them out of there okay without dad or freaking chowing them. So we'll see.
The nice thing about geckos is they lay more eggs, and
for sure. So I've definitely corrected that, and let's see. I had some more Grandis. I got another Grandis baby. I'm expecting. I still have 4 eggs in the incubator now. So those are just so chugging along like clockwork. What else? I feel like there was something else.
Well, while we're on geckos, I got a little Amy hatch out today, so that was nice.
That's what's up. Nice.
Centralian knobtails. Yeah, such cool species. So that was a little bit of a surprise, because I had another clutch that was older, and the eggs crashed and died, and then one of the eggs from this clutch died as well, and then there was one remaining egg, and I wasn't quite sure if it was good or not, and so I was very happy to see a little baby in there this morning. So not a bad way to start out the day. But
that is not never a bad way to start out the day. So that's pretty much it here. I just wanted to throw a shout out to Shane Adamson. So those people who didn't know or not Tracy I folks, Shane got a clutch of 6 eggs to Tracy I. He successfully hatched all 6 eggs, and looks like he has a nice sex ratio right down the middle. So that's amazing accomplishment, man. Just super stoked for him. Super stoked for more, privately owned Tracy I in the United States. It's good. Awesome. It looks good. It looks like we're trending, and I hope more of us U.S. keepers keep having success. Just hats off to him, man. Congrats, dude. It's a big one. So
It wasn't there also a clutch of Moluccan eggs? So
eggs
laid.
Well.
I
Yeah.
can't remember
Well,
who
so
posted that,
I
but
don't think that they're I don't think that they are on the ground yet.
well, the
But
picture I saw was eggs.
did you?
Yeah,
Well, maybe I haven't. Yeah, it was from Marcel Hawkins.
I believe so. It's
So
yeah,
his female was gravid, and when the last I saw, if there's eggs on the ground, then dude, congratulations to him as well. Um,
yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere. Anyway, yeah, it seems like a good year for Somalia for
yeah,
the scrub
for
pythons.
sure.
That's
So
always nice.
I
Maybe we
know.
get those rare species produced in captivity. Um,
Yep,
yeah,
my finger to the sky for my people, man. That's awesome, dude.
right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we're um, getting closer to completion on the book. I put out a little mock cover of the book that I
I
made
saw
up.
that. Looks
Yeah,
good, dude.
it's
You're just teasing these
just a little
folks.
teaser. Yeah,
Yeah.
should be fun. But
I see them.
uh,
They're writhing. They're writhing in their seats, dude. You guys are gonna have to stop teasing and take this thing to print.
I know we're just about there. It's just the way it goes. You know, you got to be a little patient with us. It's a
Oh,
big process, man.
for sure.
We're in the layout stage now, and I don't know, man. It's tough trying to organize all your photos, and I mean, just think of the number of carpet python morphs there are, and trying to get a picture of most of those, if not all of them, and having them all laid out in a coherent manner. It's a struggle, and then not to mention trying to round up pictures of rarer pythons like Owen Pelly's or Carinata, the rough scales, trying to get those for the book. And we've been very fortunate to have a lot of good people contributing photos, and we really appreciate that. I mean, this is not a moneymaker. I wouldn't be surprised if we lost money on it, just the amount of time and things that it takes, and the amount of effort that it takes to get it to print. But I think it'll be a good work. I mean, that's the idea. We're trying to put out as best the best work we can do. So,
Well, I mean, I can pretty much assure people that I've talked to Justin, a little bit at length about the book, and that he's really trying to bring another book, not just a reprint of the same book. So, everybody just be patient. I know I give you the ribbing, but I think everybody understands that you're trying to bring that next level of the complete carpet to people, and we're excited. So
yeah, and rest assured, we didn't want to just slap a different cover on it and add a few pictures or something. I mean, this is pretty much a new book. We've replaced most of the pictures from the first edition. Of course, we've kept a couple that were, really interesting natural history things. But man, we've got some just fantastic photos from some amazing photographers, and so yeah, it's going to be a nice document of all the variety and interesting appearances that you can find in carpet pythons. And that cover photo, I mean, goodness gracious,
sick.
That's a
Sick.
Flinders Range's carpet. Not sure where it fits in. It's
Right.
similar in a lot of ways to Metcalfi, but a very different animal, and also somewhat similar to Imbricata in some previous genetic studies. So it's hard to say, where they fit in, and they may have some common ancestry with Centralian pythons with Morelia bredli or bredli. So that's pretty interesting things, fun things to think about and work out. We've got some ideas of how things parse out and how things are related to each other, and but taxonomy, that's always a fun topic.
For sure. Well,
we'll
hold
leave
fast.
that to the taxonomy.
Yeah, for sure. Hold fast, all you carpet fans. Keep your carpet underoos on. It's coming. So
yeah, appreciate the patience. I mean, we should have probably had it done by now, but we kind of held off for some genetic work, so that should be fun to have. Warren Booth is doing some work on the book as well. He wrote a couple nice chapters on some of the aspects of phylogenetics, as well as some reproductive phenomena. So should be cool. And
cool.
smart guy. I mean, Warren's, he's one of those
he is.
real researchers that knows what he's talking about, and so I just have to go, okay, just tell us what this means. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so we're of course, indebted to a lot of these people that are giving us insights and helping us out, and really appreciative of those contributors. And
well, it's why I like the community, man. They're
yep.
you know,
good people.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, our Australian brethren over there, in Cistern, helping us out, sending lots of in situ photos. It just really wouldn't be the same without their input. So very appreciated.
People. It's all about me and me mates.
Yep, but it should be a pretty hefty book as well. We'll have we're adding quite a few pages onto the book. So every time we took over a chapter, it came away, almost twice as long in some instances, if not more. So we should be able to double the length of the book to some extent. So
nice.
See how it shakes out, but it's always hard to tell just from the text.
I'm ready. You better have my copy. Set my copy aside.
Yep. I'll hand deliver it or something. Get it.
There you go. Oh, I like that. That would be truly the treat, man. To
and if we finish it in the winter, good place to be is San Diego.
Yeah. Heck, even if it runs long and you get it in the spring and we go herping and Anne's ready to go. So
that'd be awesome. That's a good reminder to thank the Patreons for supporting Morelia Pythons Radio. Definitely goes to help run the show here and all the things that go on. So if you haven't yet, consider contributing to the cause and keep this show running. All the shows. How many shows are on there now? I mean, they added the new Colubrids and Colubroids podcast.
Colubroids,
another. Great minds there.
Well, I really like Zach. Getting to know him from the podcast that we did was cool, and I am down to support down people, and I only listened to the first introductory episode, and it was really good. I'm have a lot of excitement and hope for his podcast. It looks like it's going to be a good one. And colubrids aren't my thing, but certainly a man like Zach can get me. Sounds like he could probably get me into liking him. So sure. Man, good stuff.
All right. Well, should we get into this? All right. So let's introduce the topic today. We're going to be talking about wholesaling animals. So that's kind of a little bit of a controversial topic. So I guess we'll kind of frame it as wholesale versus retail, or, the pros and cons of wholesaling, however you want to see it. But let's discuss wholesaling of animals.
Yeah.
We'll kind of define it a little better as we go through this. But yeah, all right. You ready to lose a coin toss? Wait, you won last week, didn't you?
Yeah. What a jerk. Jesus. Wow. You lose one coin toss and all of a sudden the other Justin comes out.
Yeah, I'm coming out swinging, man. I'm not this.
Dr. Julinder and Mr. Hyde.
There you go. Okay, you ready to call it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tails.
Oh, it is heads. I apologize for another loss, but I can't say I didn't
sorry.
call
no,
it.
don't apologize if you're not sorry. Don't apologize if you're not sorry.
Hey, fake modesty. You got to fake it till you make it.
Listen, I'll take the hard side of any topic you wanna fight about, and and it may not sound good, it may not be awesome, but I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it because I'm committed. I'm committed to this.
I'm not sure which side I'm on here. I guess I can see maybe some benefits of both. So, man, I'll go with wholesale, I guess.
Okay. All right.
I'll go for the goodness of wholesaling animals to wholesalers. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm more firmly on the retail side, but I'm gonna try to defend wholesaling today.
That's cool. Well, okay. I just wanted to be said that I show up for the fight and whatever I got to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. And again, that's what this podcast is about. We don't necessarily espouse the views that we take on this podcast, but to some extent we can see the benefit of both sides or either side and try to bring that out, even if we don't necessarily strongly agree with it. I'm sure we can see. Yeah, it's the scientific process
We
here.
are also not always okay winning or losing 36 coin tosses in a row or whatever it is. So just, I win.
Tell. We couldn't
No,
tell you.
I won one, and now I'm going back on my 12 coin toss losing streak. So I got 11 more to go now. So that's good. That's good. No, that's good.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let you start it out, man.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
So all right, so all right. So retail versus
him and Han.
yeah, I know. I'm ho hum. So retail versus wholesale. I think the big problem I see with wholesaling is that probably the biggest is that it allows kind of people to produce animals in a way that doesn't really make them kind of feel the saturation of a market. It allows them to move those animals out. It's nice and easy. It's nice and quick. They don't have to spend as much resource raising them up, keeping them, heating them. They don't have to worry about marketing them and selling them. So it's a nice, easy way for them out. But at the same time, like in a market where lots of people produce ball pythons, and we just kind of talked about this in our monoculture. This kind of ties in. It allows them to kind of just move those things out, and it's somebody else's problem, and they can just kind of say like, well, I just produce them. I don't have to worry about where they go or what happens to them. So that's probably one of the biggest issues I would see with wholesaling. Whereas retailing, you really have to take responsibility for what you produce. And if you hold on to it, you got to feed it, you got to raise it, and you got to find a home for it. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that, you should be responsible for what you're producing, and you shouldn't, be producing more than you can handle. And that's something that, is maybe hard on the front end of this kind of thing. But once you get into it, you kind of learn the balance. But I mean, that being said, I had to make a rack pretty quickly on the fly to handle some of the additional babies that I got in. So, that still happens occasionally, I'd say. But
yeah,
I think they can definitely, I disagree with you where, you say that they won't feel the saturation, feel the effects of market saturation, where I see that completely opposite, because if they're trying to sell to a wholesaler, animals that are in a saturated market, like say there's, a million ball pythons available and they're trying to sell wholesalers, ball pythons, the wholesalers aren't going to give them much for their ball pythons. They're going to be like, yeah, I'll give you $5 a piece for them. And then the person producing them has to go, oh, wait a second, I didn't pay $5 for mine. I don't want to lose all this money on these babies. And so it kind of makes them rethink and double check themselves. I think the alternative to that is that if they are desperate enough, that they have to get rid of them, or they produce too many and they don't know what to do with all these things, it kind of teaches them the lesson of be prepared. Don't just sell your stuff because you can't handle it or you produce too much. You got to plan for these things, or else you're going to just, lose money and give away your hard work for next to nothing. So it also helps people see have that outlet for these things. And I think I would say probably the best aspect of that is it actually kind of pushes out some of the wild caught stuff that from that wholesaler. So they usually have those giant tables at reptile shows, and they have just a huge selection of animals, and a lot of them, in the past, especially historically, have been wild caught. But with the more people producing different species in captivity and potentially selling these to these wholesalers, they can kind of compete with the wild caught stuff, especially as imports slow down with things like, a global pandemic or whatnot.
Right.
As imports slow down, they're going to need captive bred animals from, local producers even more. And so they're going to pay, as top dollars as a wholesaler provides for some of these captive bred animals. And I think that's pretty obvious with the recent rise in colubrid popularity, or kind of resurgence of colubrid popularity. They were being produced very well, and you could get some of these common species like a California king snake or a black Mexican black king snake for $20-$50, pretty inexpensive, all day long. And now they're $200-$300 a piece instead of $50. So which is a good thing. I like to see animals not devalued because they're overproduced or because of popularity, and then
and that could be, I mean, that could be just a rise in popularity because people are exposed to something that they didn't kind of understand before or whatever. But to kind of, I don't know, to run back, I don't necessarily think that, I don't agree with you that them not being able to sell their animals to a wholesaler makes them responsible. And I think that most of the time a wholesaler will take animals. They're just going to pay what they can. And most wholesalers have their price for something, right? They say like, okay, I can sell this for this much. I'm only going to pay this for this much. If the market is so saturated that they're like, I'm giving you $5 for that. Like that alone is kind of a why wholesaling is a negative thing, right? If it gets that saturated that they're only going to give you $5 for it, and you're like, that's horrible. Well, then the market is so saturated because wholesalers are out there doing that, and there's so much inventory of it that they're only willing to give $5 for it. Even if you retailed it, then you're struggling against a saturated wholesale market. You know what I mean? So it's almost like if it gets to that point. So what I'm saying is that I do think that generally speaking, wholesalers will pay because they want breeders to be selling them animals, because they're not in the business of producing animals. They're just in the business of reselling animals. Sure. Right. Sure. So I do think that it's not really in their interest to lowball you out to the point where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to. And there are wholesalers who are like, yeah, I'm only going to give you this. And I know breeders who will be like, yeah, I'm not going to pay that. And they go to another wholesaler and sell their animals to them. But in the same vein, it kind of goes to a cumulative, sales problem or a saturation of the market problem when, if I don't hear what I like from this guy, I just go to this guy or this gal and I sell to them. And then I think the other thing that you said that I kind of take issue with is that a lot of times those businesses that buy wholesale also buy import. So now you're taking animals that were produced in captivity by breeders with closed colonies, and you're moving them in close proximation with animals that are imported and, maybe don't have any type of, protocols around their quarantine. Maybe an importer hits them with some deworm, maybe they don't, I don't know, but what it does is it takes a very clean animal and puts them in a level of risk that wasn't there just by being associated with somebody. And I'm not saying that all people who buy wholesale also buy imports, but everybody who's listening to this knows a business that buys, and most reptile shops they will buy wholesale animals because if you're a breeder, you can sell them your animals, but you damn sure know that they're bringing in tree monitors and endo stuff and, stuff that comes around. And, we all kind of also understand how that stuff comes in and the condition it comes in. So there's an added level of risk when you're, for those people who buy wholesale animals. I guess to the breeder, it's not, the breeder suffers no, risk in that. It's the end user or the end, keeper who suffers that risk. And when they have a bad outcome, that sucks. You know what I mean? And I would honestly say, I don't think that the breeder who wholesaled that animal had that intention for it either. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I would hope not. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we recognize that that's one of the downsides of the hobby is that, animals are imported and oftentimes don't last long in captivity, and certain species are looked at as, as garbage animals or, throwaway pets, that kind of thing. And we definitely want to move past that. And I still hold to it that even if you are getting, captive bred animals in an environment where they have, interaction or whatever with wild caught animals, they're still going to be on average more healthy and more resistant and things like that. Potentially. I mean, there are obviously exceptions to that, but, and that's still an undesirable aspect of the wholesaler. And I think with wholesalers, I imagine they would understand that concept, right? They're not idiots. And if they're going to stay around for any amount of time, they've got to be able to keep their animals clean and healthy to some extent. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's some negative examples of that don't give a crap about the animals. And we should definitely, vote with our dollar, which businesses we want to support, because there are some businesses that do it the right way. And hopefully they're continuing to evolve and improve what they're doing so they can maximize the potential, life and enjoyment of their life for the animals. But, there's having captive bred animals there, I think overall brings the bar up a bit and helps those animals to be better suited for captivity. And, if they're having different protocols to keep those animals in a different area, the captive bred versus a wild caught, I think that would be probably smart for an importer to do.
And I mean, listen, I don't disagree with you. I have a reptile store that has multiple stores in my area. There's one, down here in San Diego. I like those guys down there. They're all very, very, they're good. They know what they're talking about. They're smart. And they're reptile nerds, you know what I mean? But I went up to another store that was up north one time. And I don't remember why I was there or whatever, but there was a whole tank full of boas that were literally all staring straight up at the light. I mean, it was like classic IBD, just stargazing. And I'm like, holy shit, get me out of here, and so I understand what you're saying. And I do agree with you, because I know these guys at the other shop and they know what they're doing and they do their best. But at the same time, my point is when you do commingle those two things when something that is highly infectious gets into, a shop like that, where you have captive bred animals that are nice and clean when they come in, maybe they don't always leave nice and clean. And that sucks. I mean, I'm not faulting a wholesaler for that, but it is something that I think that the end keeper, and a lot of times in those stores doesn't really have the cognizant idea of what they're doing. You know what I mean? They don't get it. Sure. They think it's just a pet shop, and they don't understand that it's a potential disease vector. And unwittingly they have a bad experience and it turns them off because they're like, yeah, I had this thing and it just fucking died and I don't fucking know. And it's like, man, that sucks. But had they bought retail, they would not have had that animal exposed to that risk. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't kill it or they couldn't do something dumb, but what I'm talking about is something that's out of their control, that they didn't. And it's okay. in their ignorance, it's out of their control. They could be astute enough to read up to be like, hey, I think something's wrong with this. They could figure it out. They could take it to the vet. They could do all the right things. But if they don't know in the first place what to look for, they may miss it. They may have a bad outcome. And you know, obviously, you buy it from a breeder. You buy it retail. You're going to pay a little more for it, but it's clean, and you still kill it. Yeah, that is definitely a risk of keeping animals. But when you're talking about, adding disease on top of it, it makes it tough, I guess.
But I mean, you're assuming that doesn't happen with private breeders. Of course it happens.
No, and you're right. No, that's correct. That's correct.
I guess I'm always wary if there's like a fire sale on animals, need to move these quick. I'm moving or whatever. Like, yeah, it's probably because they're neglected or they have a disease sometimes, sometimes you get lucky and that's not the case, but
sure.
We're looking for a deal on the animal. I don't know. I've always found that funny in the reptile industry is where people will I remember somebody haggling with me at the NARBC show. They were trying to get an Angolan python, and they were haggling with Ben and I over the price of the snake. They just didn't want to pay so much for it, blah, blah. And then, as soon as they got us, they whittled us down. We're not probably the most firm, price people sometimes, but we weren't in the past. But it was like, then they walked across and bought a full retail, tank and all the little supplies, and probably spent more than they did on the snake. And I'm like, wait a second, how does that work? But anyway, maybe a lot of times it's the opposite thing. They kind of try to make do with what they have, or try to dust off an old tank somewhere. And that happens as well. But I guess the point is
I could see how that doesn't feel good, but at the same time, I don't discredit. I don't fault them for spending the extra money on the stuff to take care of the animal, right? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, but I do understand what that feeling is like. Like, seriously, you're gonna haggle me to the ground on this, and then you're gonna just go like unnegotiably, like, this is the price of a tank. Okay, I'll take it. You know what I mean? It's like, what?
Or they come to your table and say, hey, I saw the same thing on this importer's table, and they only have it for $50. Why are you asking $200? Like, well, go buy it from them and you'll see why mine's 200 and theirs is 50.
Well, and I think that's if you want to let me go, I think that's part of why I think retail is a little bit better than wholesale, is because those wholesalers can kind of, be a little, that because they pay less, they can play around with that money a little bit more. Whereas somebody who's put the time and energy to buy the genetics, to breed the animals, to take care of it, to feed it, and if they're going to invest that much time and they're going to hold those animals, then they're hopefully that what they're selling you is worth the money that you're buying, right? And that's why you pay more for animals, because hopefully that animal that you're buying is, I hate to use the word a superior, animal, but I definitely think that there are breeders who put out superior, snakes and reptiles, right? Like I do believe that that's a thing like that. And that's why there are certain breeders who you'll never see them wholesale, because they don't have to wholesale. Well, and they ask big money and they get that money. You know what I mean?
With your example of the pet shops, though, I think we can agree that there are some really good wholesalers and some really crappy wholesalers. And so, and I would also say that most of the breeders out there probably have a relationship with some of the good wholesalers. So you might be buying the same animals, if they're in the same town as their wholesaler, you might be buying the same animals from the wholesaler's table as you are from the breeder's table. There's, that could very well happen. And I think a lot of these kind of larger breeders, they understand that they probably can't necessarily take care of all of theirs. And so part of their business model includes selling to wholesalers. And so they probably have a worked out relationship with good wholesalers. I mean, what do you see at the end of every show? Breeders, hobbyists, large, small breeders, whatever, they're making deals with the wholesalers at the show to take the extra animals they don't want to take back home and feed. That happens very commonly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in a lot of instances, the wholesalers probably go to more shows, they vend more shows, they have a presence, for selling animals, and they have more interaction with customers. I mean, compared to somebody like me, where they're interacting with people on a daily basis selling animals. I don't do that. I'm pretty lazy when it comes to my animal sales, and I'd rather just take care of them and keep them all, apparently. So that's kind of the thing is, they have more opportunity to sell those animals. So you could be buying the exact same animal that you're trying to haggle with the breeder and say, hey, this animal's on the breeder table. They might know, oh, that's one of my animals. They're not going to say that to you, but it's a possibility, right?
So I will say that, yes, that is a possibility, but you and I both know plenty of breeders who wholesale a bunch of stuff, and then their really nice stuff they keep because they take it to shows to sell. Right. And that's how they that's kind of their model.
But my point wasn't that you're going to get a better looking animal, but you're going to get a similar quality of animal in terms of health and that kind of thing,
Maybe. I mean, I like I said, that animal that's wholesaled is opened up to a whole other avenue of potential problems. Are they there or are they not? I don't know, but potentially, right?
Yeah.
And whereas those animals that are produced in that breeder's facility are only as much risk as there is in that facility, whereas those animals that are wholesaled are as much risk in that facility plus whatever they're exposed to when they leave and are moved around by that wholesaler. So, and to me, those guys who make a lot of deals at the end of shows, there's a part of me that kind of gets that. And there's another part of me as somebody who keeps a very small, very closed collection. I think people who are successful with stuff should really worry about their biosecurity and their closed collection, right? That is really, really important to me as a person now. And I think that, that looseness with your biosecurity is something that to me is a really big thing now. And so that's why I kind of feel like that whole retail avenue is just, potentially a little bit safer, and you see plenty of people on YouTube who are showing off their collections who have poor biosecurity. You can watch them do it. They go from tub to tub, pulling shit out, showing you like, oh no, like don't do that. Don't do that. You know what I mean? And so it's something that I think is a concern, and especially when you're moving wholesale, you like I said, you're kind of you're creating a potential problem multiplier.
Mm-hmm. But again, I think if you're going to be in that business and you're going to be selling, a number of animals and having a wide variety of species, you've got to keep that, you've got to take that into consideration and have, and I'd imagine maybe some of these wholesalers have a better biosecurity plan than some breeders out there. Like you mentioned, I don't think it necessarily is a dividing line between retailers and wholesalers. And, when we include retail, we're including pet shops where you saw that issue and things like that. You're paying top dollar, probably more than you'd spend with a breeder to buy an animal from a pet shop. And so, it's kind of a tricky thing that way too, because you're selling to a wholesaler. They're going to buy low and sell high, they're going to sell for maybe a little bit more than maybe the breeder could even sell it for. So there are some, they do need to keep their stock happy and healthy to some extent. And, there is that consideration. I mean, I think things are evolving and improving
I do agree with you. I do agree with you that I do think, well, yeah, me too. And I do agree with you that I think things are evolving and things have improved. I even think when you look at like the import stuff, the way stuff used to come in imported versus how some stuff comes imported now, some of it's a lot better. I never touched my Tracy eye as far as worming them, nothing. I did nothing to them, and they are fine. They're fine. Absolutely fine. They were, 100 grams when I got them. So they were probably some of the smallest imported Tracy eye you're probably going to get.
Yeah,
but
that's the best place to start as it is,
Absolutely. And that's a huge part. That's a huge part of it. Anyway, back. My only thing around like a wholesaler is that if they have employees, the wholesaler might get it. But you have an employee that you're paying, whatever you're paying that employee, their primary thought is, hey, it's my job to clean these cages. It's my job to change the water bowl. It's my job to do this. They're not paid to think in terms of biosecurity. So now, that's not to say that, in my business, training is a huge thing. If something happens and they're not trained, it is a huge deal. So for me, if I have an employee, I ensure that my employee is trained and that he has signed that training roster so that if anything happens to a multi-million-dollar aircraft, I can say, we talked about that. Here's the sheet. Here's his name. He signed it. He was trained. I don't know if that's happening in kind of a wholesale, it's much more of a cap. I mean, I work in a high precision, high risk industry. So I don't think other people think like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I there are kind of an increasing number of maybe more smaller, more compact or importers, like where they're not bringing in a ton of animals, and so they can really care for the ones that come in, and maybe those are rarity, but
I think like Dan Mullery, he doesn't. Well, to my knowledge, he doesn't bring in a lot of stuff. But the stuff that I have seen that comes in from him is good stuff. It looks good. So. Yeah, I definitely don't think that all importers are created equal. And that's an important distinction for sure.
So, I guess that's the main thing is anybody that's considering buying an animal can weigh these things and say, there's a risk of this or there's a risk of that, and just kind of check the animal out. And I think that really precludes kind of this idea of impulse purchasing. New keepers are notorious for that, where it's hard not to get excited, because honestly there's so many cool animals out there, and you go to a reptile show and you're like, holy cow, look at all of these cool animals. I'm in heaven here, and then they just buy and buy and buy, and then they're like, oh wait, what do I do with do I have cages for that? Now I got to get cages, now I got to scramble. So there's not I've heard. But on the other side, if you're doing your research, a wholesaler might be your only option for something like a Tracy, where only Chuck Pullen's producing Tracy, and so he's not letting any go. So where do you get them? The only option is through an importer. So you just do your research, find out the ones that are bringing in animals, have relatively young or clean animals, and make your decision based on those kind of things. Research and planning and patience is always better than trying to rush something so you can get that project in your hands and get going on it. There's a lot of opportunities and things that come along if you can be patient about a project.
Well, and I think if you buy through somebody who is a wholesale importer, and you find import animals, sometimes you got to take that animal and you got to fix it. You got to rehab that animal. You got to worm it. You got to take it to the doctor. You got to, my Tracy, they were fantastic when they still didn't eat. I still had to get them to eat, and still I kept them in a closet in my front room in tubs and drop fed them until they started feeding. And it was still I in the best scenario, I still had a difficult time, and I was pretty stressed. I was way more stressed out than they were, and I couldn't even imagine paying the prices that some people are paying now for imported stuff that's coming in. But so to go back, I want to toot retailers' horns a little bit, and to you, you know, I mean, I think that a lot of what you do, you have a lot of really interesting, that you have built an interesting, amazing collection of animals, and you reproduce those animals, right? And I think that retail is an important way for you to showcase who you are as a breeder, and it articulates the the passion that you have and the fascination that you've found for Australian pythons. And so if Justin Julander were just to wholesale his stuff, some of the point, some of the the passion that you have, and really who you are as a reptile breeder gets lost. And I get that there's a convenience and a an efficiency to wholesaling, but if what we're doing is a passion, and we care about what we want, and what we do, and we want to be hopefully recognized and remembered for the not only our contributions, but how we care about what other people care about. I think retail is something that is the only way to do that. It's sitting at those tables. It's making that website. It's being, it's Justin Julander being the face of AAR, right?
Sure. Yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, like, I go to a reptile show, and the busiest table at the show is not my table. It's
that
the
doesn't
table,
make it right.
The big importer table, and the table that has the most, variety, and I kind of, honestly, I kind of like get down there and peek at stuff and go, oh, that'd be cool to work with, or, oh, look at that animal, that kind of thing. But, I don't really have many new projects I want, but I like to look at some of the diversity and things on some of these big tables, but they're always packed. I mean, there's always like standing room only, around the edges, and they're waiting to talk to the sales representative. So,
let me ask you this, because I will admit my ignorance, and that was laid bare a little bit in the last podcast, about social media and the fact that I don't participate like maybe I should. But do you see people clamoring to talk to the the importer, the importer wholesaler pet shop guys, like they want to talk to the breeders, right? Like the idea that the Ken Foose or the Lauren, what's triple L? Lauren, his last name's escaping me, but I don't hear those guys on podcasts. I don't hear those guys out in public, because they're just running a business. They're just moving and selling it. They have no interest in doing anything to promote their, like it's a business to them. Now,
I disagree with you on Ken Foose. I mean, rest his soul, but he was extremely knowledgeable. He knew a lot more than, he'd probably forgotten a lot more than most people know in regards to reptiles. And I mean, when you're around such a variety and diversity of species, you kind of have to know a lot about a lot of animals. I mean, I've kind of specialized in a certain number, so I know a lot, probably more than most people in regards to like carpet pythons or Antaresia or whatever. But talk to me about boas, and I don't know much at all. I have a very minimal rudimentary knowledge of boas, and so there's definitely some benefits and some things you can glean from an importer that knows a lot about a lot of animals, or maybe a medium amount about a lot of animals. They still have that huge knowledge base. And so I do think that, if they're at a show, I mean, yeah, you're right. Sometimes when your business gets big enough, like probably Lauren with Triple L, they may not be at all the shows. Yeah. I'm sure they aren't able to go to all the shows that Triple L is at.
I could be wrong, but isn't Lauren on the board of US ARC?
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
I hold on.
I
Go ahead.
yeah, I
Keep
know
going up.
Ken Foose was, member of different herpetological societies, if not the president at some time or another. And I mean, he was a very knowledgeable person. So I think there is if they're successful and if they're a good importer, they're going to have to know a lot about a lot of different species, especially those species that come in commonly, and maybe some of the rare stuff that they can get in or work with. And like I said, a lot of these guys are buying captive bred animals from different breeders, and so they need to have kind of a relationship and a knowledge. You're not, if you're a responsible breeder, you're not just going to send out your animals to just anybody. So I think, at the show, if you have a choice of 4 or 5 different importers, you're going to know who you want to deal with, and you're going to want to deal with the people who are most knowledgeable and that do the best job of keeping those animals happy and healthy. So that's kind of the selection process that weeds out the garbage. Not to say that they can't persist like a cockroach in a nuclear storm or something, but they definitely get weeded out faster than the knowledgeable and responsible importers. So I definitely think there is a place for that.
Let me clarify. So Lauren is definitely on the board of directors for USARK. And what I am saying is that, these business owners like Lauren, like Jeff Ronan, like a lot of these guys who contribute to the community, they contribute to the community in a way that secures their business, secures their livelihood, secures their love. But they're not going out doing podcasts. They're businessmen. This is their business.
Oh yeah, they're probably job, really right? Busy with
100%.
I mean,
100%.
I guess if they're at all these shows and they're talking with all these different people, then they're gonna, or they're training their people and teaching them about the animals. That knowledge gets dissipated and gets put out to the people who eventually wind up with the animals, hopefully. And
I'm not trying to say anything disrespectful. Yeah. I'm not trying to say anything like,
I don't know, Chuck.
Listen, what I am trying to say is that a retailer is going to be either on his website supporting you through this great social media that you so well argued in our last episode, or you're going to see them at their show. You're going to interact with them. Those are going to be their animals on their table, and they will be taking responsibility for them, just like you do, or you're going to go do tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wasatch Reptile Show.
Well, it's the Reptilian Nation.
Oh, it's the other one.
My new bad. One, yeah.
See, damn! I thought I was gonna make a nice little and I didn't.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. No, I get that, and it is hard to run a big business like Triple L.
Sure.
But you look at like you said, the example of Dan Malari, where he's putting out videos, he's showing animals in their natural habitat. He's doing all these things to educate people and keep them informed about the animals that he's importing and providing.
And Dan's the real deal. He is the real deal.
I'm really just saying, there's definitely
100%.
And there's a lot of retailers or personal, like people like me at shows, not that I do this, but they'll just sit back and fold their arms and sit in their chair. And if you want to buy an animal, buy the animal. Don't sit and try to chit chat with them, because they're not outgoing. They're not trying to engage you in conversation. I think that's intimidating for a lot of people to go up to that table and just see kind of a, somebody who's interested in talking or sharing information.
They're jaded to the tire kicker, right?
Yeah,
they want to make a sale. And if you're not coming in, you're going to buy something. And let's be honest, I mean, at a show, you do deal with a lot of people who just come up and who are like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, can you tell me about that? And I get it, man. I'm the get off my fucking lawn guy. Of course I'm kind of like, oh, really? I gotta tell you about it? Okay, I'll tell you about it.
I'm lucky if I don't get my lose my voice at reptile shows. I'm just talking the whole time, trying to educate. I always love to say, hey, have you ever heard of the Antaresia complex or the Antaresia genus or whatever, get people interested in things they may never have heard of, because isn't it cool that you're looking at the smallest python in the world at my table. Come
Right.
on, that's
That's what I'm
cool.
saying.
And you've never heard of it. You didn't know there were pythons that were 2 feet long. Come on, that's interesting
And
stuff.
isn't that the awesome part about being a real retailer is you get to sell your love right there at your table with your animals that you produce.
Sure,
Now,
but I
get,
guess I'm not saying that that's exclusive to to those people, and I would say too that a lot of the retailer, or sorry, a
well,
lot of the
well,
wholesalers
hold on.
have breeding programs,
I would say that's
right?
exclusive to you because nobody else gets to sell your animals at your
Sure.
table with your passion.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
other people can do what you do, but it's you. You know what I mean?
but like I said, they may not have that zeal, and they may sit there. So I'm not saying that passion and excitement and energy and love for an animal is restricted to retailers. You can
no, and
get that on either side. But
I get that,
yeah.
and I guess that's kind of what I'm arguing right now is the zeal and the love that you have. It comes through, and like we were talking about on the last episode, Kerry King will sit back like I'm a rock star, I'm cool because he is, but when you come up with like, hey man, let me check out your carpet pythons, he's like, oh man, let me show you this, check this shit out, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and that's the and everybody who sees that, like I keep bringing up, is like that's what's up. I recognize genuine love and admiration for this when I see it. And I think that's something that only a retailer can give you. You know what I mean? You'll never see that from now.
Never.
Not never. I said,
we don't use those words.
Listen, my guy. Yeah, you're right. No, my guys at the shop I go to, they definitely have some passion for some stuff. We chat. They know I've bred Tracy Eye, and they're super geeked, and we talk about stuff, and it's their passion is definitely there, but it's not the same thing as interfacing with a customer over something that is wholly your passion, wholly your product, and all right there for them to interact. So like they understand. They get a chance to interact with Justin Julander, whose vision was, Australian addiction reptile, and it's right there in front of them. And last year's babies or this year's babies and last year's baby, whatever, is right there for them to see. And you can talk about that. And it's so much more than what a wholesale, even somebody who's savvy as a wholesaler, can give you. You know what I mean? You give somebody such a more robust delivery.
All right, man, you're trying to get my guard down with flattery, and it's really working. No.
See, maybe I found the chink in your armor.
Flattery will get you everywhere. No,
yeah.
I see what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent, but I don't think it's exclusive to those people. And I mean, how many small breeders or retailers or whatever haven't dreamed of having the huge warehouse full of reptiles and attending every reptile show and making it a business like the wholesalers do. I'm sure Lauren was keeping reptiles in his basement, and had that same degree of passion. And yeah, I mean, as you build a big business or empire, I mean, you look at some of the big breeders that do produce their own animals. They've got to run a business, and a lot of times they're not even working with the animals themselves. They're basically training employees to work with their animals, and they're dealing with customers or those kind of things, or going to shows, or going and making YouTube videos or whatever. So they're not necessarily on that front edge either. So I don't think what you're saying is exclusive to retailers. I think wholesalers can have that same passion and excitement and share that, just in different ways. Or
it just doesn't translate because.
But again, I'm only at 2 shows a year or 3 shows a year. These guys are attending.
I'm not talking.
Shows.
Okay, so I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Nick Button then.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, That's a great example of a guy who
But
is
if you go to Nick Mutton's table, you have a limited number of things that you can talk to him about, right? Pythons.
Oh, I don't know,
He's an
man.
expert
Nick
in
can
Python. Maybe
freaking
some of those
talk.
island
Nick will talk.
boas, things like that,
I
right?
don't know,
But
man.
you try to talk to him
Nick
about
will go off
geckos. Try
topic
to talk to him about geckos or monitors or something. He'll admit, I don't know about them. I don't really keep them. I don't care that much, about those groups. So I'm sorry, find somebody else to talk to because I can't really chat with you about that,
Well, so
Whereas,
what? So what?
you can go to a wholesaler and you can talk about monitors, you can talk about geckos, you can talk about pythons, you can talk about colubrids, and they know it all, right? They can have excitement and passion for all of them. And if they don't have it,
Do
if the
they
person
though?
helping
Do
you
they though?
doesn't have it, there's like 12 guys at the table and they
I don't.
say, "Hey, Jimmy, you know about monitors. Come over and talk to this guy. He's
I don't
interested in
buy that.
monitors."
I don't buy
You
that.
don't? Have you? Well,
No.
you need to go to more
No.
reptile shows and you'll see it.
Listen, no,
That
it's not about
happens.
me. Listen, this is not a me problem. This is a what you're saying problem. You're saying that those wholesalers, they know more about all those monitors that they get. No, they don't. No, they don't.
You don't think so?
No.
Then who? Then Nick? They
Monitor
know a lot
Mike.
more about those monitors than Nick does. He'll tell
Well,
you
yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, but
That's what I'm saying is
but what I'm telling you is
maybe their knowledge isn't on pythons isn't as deep as Nick's. If you go to their table, you can learn about pythons and geckos and colubrids and right.
And so that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, bro, is that those people who want to learn about carpet pythons are going to go to Nick's table. Those people who are going to want to learn about, Australian geckos and Antaresia and carpets and,
sure.
skinks, they're going to your table, right?
But what I'm saying is they could go to the wholesaler's table and get
but he
a
doesn't.
decent amount of knowledge on the same subjects.
I don't buy that.
Okay, so I got to go
buy that shit.
I got to go herping with Rob. He works at Nerd, right? And Rob Christian, and he he has his own podcast. He's very excited about Somalia and scrub pythons. That guy knows a lot about a lot of things. He works for a big breeder / import wholesaler, whatever you want to call Nerd. They have a ton of different animals, and Rob had a very broad knowledge base on a lot of different species. Insects. I mean, we were all going to him to talk to him about spiders, things like that, where I guarantee the people who work for these importers and wholesalers, if they're a good company like Nerd or Triple L or whatever you want to talk about, they're gonna the people working there are passionate about reptiles. You don't work at a place like that unless you're passionate and have some knowledge behind you.
So one, I don't disagree with you that Rob is a bad motherfucker. Okay, I don't know Rob personally. I've never met him personally, but I know him through social media enough to know, yes, he's a bad motherfucker. And motherfuckers that work at Nerd are bad motherfuckers. Why? Because they're breeders there. They're breeders. And they've been breeding species they've been breeding varanid species that they have down. They have been working with Somalia.
These guys are also wholesaling, right?
Yeah.
Buying wholesale clutches. That's what I'm talking about. These guys are the ones that have
how much
have the giant show.
How much wholesale clutch buying are they doing?
For certain species, I imagine it's quite a bit, right?
You can speak on that definitively.
I interacted with Rob for a few days, so I don't know all their business models and things, but I know a lot of the big breed. I mean, Brian Barczyk, for crying out, he's having unboxing videos of all these ball pythons that he's buying from other breeders.
We're definitely not talking about Brian Barczyk right now,
because he's a big breeder is what I'm talking about.
I know, but
he's buying clutches from other breeders.
Rob would be pissed off at you right now if you threw Brian Barczyk and Nerd in the same.
I think Kevin McCurley and Brian Barczyk are good friends. They visit each other and they're
I know,
buddies.
But they don't.
They're
do
kind of the
same,
old school pioneers or whatever.
I get that, but they don't do the same things.
Sure, they do. I mean, any of these big breeders, any of these big companies, are they going to turn their nose down at a clutch of captive bred animals that they may not have and want to increase the broadness of what they're selling in their shop or at reptile shows? Of course they're going to buy that clutch. Of course they are. They're part of this group that's buying up clutches at the end of reptile shows.
So Brian Barczyk is selling large numbers of difficult to breed highly.
So you're focused on the Varanids. There's more animals than just Varanids that Nerd works with. They have a huge
I get that.
collection.
I get that.
They have a bunch of Indonesian pythons that are not commonly bred. Okay. Yeah.
But they're breeding Somalia. They're breeding lots of Somalia there. They're breeding some really hard to breed stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Am I wrong? I mean, you made a
that
face.
Doesn't mean that doesn't mean they.
You made a face at me. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't define large numbers of Somalia. I mean, they might have gotten a couple, clutches here and there. I don't know that they're that successful at producing large numbers of Somalia.
Who's really successful at breeding large numbers of Somalia? They do it about they do it about as well. They do it about as well as anybody. But does Brian Barczyk do it?
But how many of their breeders are imported? I mean, Barczyk's had scrubs.
We're getting off track, but the point I'm making is that I think that retailers are the best suited to sell their animals to people because they're getting a better animal potentially. They're getting somebody who bred it, who's interested in it, who knows about it, and who's trying to make a connection to somebody that they had. And whether you're talking about Kevin McCurley at Nerd or Rob Christian, they get that too. Because I don't classify those guys as wholesalers. Do they possibly buy some wholesale here and there? Yes, but primarily what I classify those guys as breeders. And maybe maybe that's a mistake on my part of how I interface with them or understand their business model, but I don't think so.
All right. Well, I think we're looking at closing statements. Do you want to add anything, or is that your closing statement?
No, I have nothing more to say to you, sir.
All right. Well, you can see I got your goat this week. All right. Things are working.
I'm trying to bring some feisty to this.
Yeah, no, it's appreciated. It's good stuff.
Well, I let you walk all over me, to be honest. I listened to the last episode and I was like, he's right. I missed so many opportunities to challenge him on stuff that I should not let slide anymore. No, I am not letting it slide anymore.
Okay. And I guess I'd finish out by saying you're going to find that level of passion in the wholesalers as well. They were once most likely retailers at one point. They were likely breeders, of small numbers of animals. And the people that work for wholesalers and the wholesalers themselves came from somewhere, right? They came from that same area, and their passion has just driven them to expand and make it bigger and whatever. So whether or not, there's some bad apples out there, of course there are. But I mean, the wholesaler has that important area in our hobby where they're interacting maybe at a more frequent basis than some of the retailers are, some of the smaller breeders. I mean, I've got a day job. I can't be on the phone talking reptiles all day, whereas they kind of can, right? They have people coming in their shops. They're at shows. They're, peddling animals pretty much all day. So they have to know about the animals they're selling. They have to know, how to get people to buy those animals and get excited about those animals. So, I think there's definitely an important place in our hobby for those wholesalers. And so hopefully, I'd like to see the quality keep going up and keep getting people that are not looking at reptiles as throwaway pets. They're not just going on, but let me bring in 1,200, anoles and maybe a third of them will die, and that's okay. They want to make sure that each animal that comes into their care is looked after. And that's kind of what we should be moving towards. But that's I think we're getting improvements in that area, and we're seeing, these wholesalers, get more captive bred animals in, that they're selling. And I think this is important to consider. So that's kind of how I'd finish this out, but it's definitely been a lively discussion, my friend.
I try to
And
keep it lively.
yeah, I think you brought up some good points. And I've always kind of had maybe a negative outlook of wholesalers, and so I think that's kind of why I wanted to pick the side I did, to kind of think about the other side and
Well,
try to
and I do
argue.
think, and I'm just going to say this because I didn't really touch on it in the discussion, but
Mhm.
we had a whole show about you know valuing reptiles and how they should be valued and how that works out in helping to moderate the saturation level of the market. I do, and I guess I did a little bit touch on it, but I do think that there is a very distinct correlation between retail sales and saturation in the market. And I think the more people have to retail their own and take responsibility for their own animal production, the better regulated the market becomes. If you have to take care of, hundreds upon hundreds of animals that you just pop out every year and dump on somebody else, the easier it is for you to behave irresponsibly. But if you got to pay that power bill and you got to feed all those things and then you got to sell them all, like, you're going to make some probably slightly more responsible choices. And if that means better priced animals that you can, rather than producing 200, you produce 100, and you ask a little bit more, better outcome for the animal. Yep. Better moderation for the market. And I again, I'm such a fan of the idea of the the framework moderating the market economics. And I believe in that appropriately priced animal that is responsibly bred, sold, and taken care of. And I think if that can happen in a framework, it leads to the best outcome. So I think that's probably how I'd end. And yes, definitely a great debate. You're my man, dude.
That was a good one for sure.
So, fun times.
Yeah, for sure. It's good when we get lively, right? That's part of the fun here. So
for sure.
Cool, man.
I just got to stop letting you walking all over me.
I don't feel like I walk over you.
Yeah, of course, because you're like, I won that one.
I will concede nothing.
Yeah, I know. That's what I got to deal with every day.
Yeah. No, man, you definitely brought up some really good points, and there are, a lot of different facets of this, concept. And, it's really kind of almost hard to define it, because a lot of the wholesalers fit in the retail market because they're asking more than some of the breeders on some of these things. So,
it's a push pull. Yeah. It's a, there's,
sure.
Like I said, man, that nothing that we debate here is an easy argument, right? Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah. It is not. And even though, like, maybe, on an episode you bring up like points that make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, or vice versa, like the point is that even though maybe one of us didn't argue the side perfectly, it's still a difficult thing to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Because what we're talking about is in generalities, or we're talking about a specific example when we really should be talking about what the entire group looks like, and maybe nobody has a great idea of what that is. You know what I mean? So it's
no definition.
Tough. Yeah.
But the important points are that you're, keeping in mind when you're buying an animal, think about where it's coming from. Think about 100%. Think about, all those kind of things that we discussed. And, if the best thing you can do is buy a Tracier from an importer because that's the only option, just make sure you get it from as responsible an importer as you can find, or try to get, from somebody who has a good track record with other people that comes highly recommended. Do some research, figure things out before you buy the animal, and you're gonna have a better experience all around.
Absolutely. And you know what,
no bad things will happen, but
I think you're right. I think whether those wholesale importer, folks, they're doing the best they can too, man. But it's just, there's a lot of stuff that sometimes you can't control. You know what I mean? And you do the best you can, you try the best you can. And so, in My thing is like, I can control it, what happens in my facility, in my, in my area of operation, more than I can control anything else. And I can guarantee you the safety of the animal that I'm selling you better than anybody else can. That's all I know. That's all I can tell you. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Any closing words? You need to, of course, listen to the Morelia Pythons Radio Network podcast. There's some really great content out there. Thanks again for Eric and Owen for starting this monolith and for letting us be a part of it. But
hit that Patreon button, subscribe if you can, or chip in. It's greatly appreciated. It goes to good things. Podfather is a man of great love. So spread the love with him. And for me, once again, Shane Adamson, good job, dude. Super pumped about the Tracy eye. So that's all I got, dude.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Reptile Fight Club.
We're freaking out.
Later.
Fight Club.